Okay, it is time to write your blog post. I know you've been waiting for this. You might have even skipped to this section. If you did, please go back and watch the other ones ahead of this. I know that you want to dive into writing the blog post, but the other groundwork is so important. So please do that first and then come back. And even though I said we're about to write a blog post, we've got some work to do first. There's a reason that most people jump into ChatGPT, just say, write a blog post about whatever, and then hate the way it sounds, hate the formatting, it's full of wrong facts. We're gonna fix that. Don't worry. So this is the massive base prompt that I use to write my articles with ChatGPT. And I learned the idea of feeding it a style guide from Authority Hacker, and it was a game changer. So this is my style guide, kind of base prompt for it. I gave a few things in there that I think are important to have, but obviously please customize this for you. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about how to customize it. Now, if you're using GPT-4, this is going to go in your custom instructions area, but if you're using GPT 3.5, then the style guide information is going to be like, this is going to be your first prompt. But as you can see, there's things that just say like, our tone of voice is let ChatGPT define it. So we got to set this up first. So I'm going to show you how to do that before we even start writing the blog post. You only need to do this once and then just save it for yourself. So you can keep it in your notes app. You can, if you have GPT-4 and you only have one site, just leave it in your custom instructions area. Now for me, I do have multiple sites and the tone and the focus is very different between the different sites. So what I want to do first is customize this per site and then just save it so that I can come back and change it out as I need to between my various sites. If you have GPT-4 as well, you can just use this as a prompt and not put it in your custom instructions. But if you have other stuff in your custom instructions from another site, it can confuse it. So I really recommend like clearing that out first if you're going to do that. So let's set this up the right way. And we're actually going to start at the bottom. So we're going to define our brand tone of voice first. So when you're first using ChatGPT, a lot of people find that it is kind of hokey or uses a lot of cliches or just sounds weird. It doesn't sound like you. We want it to sound like us. And so you can just have it define your style of writing each time, but that's kind of annoying to have to start every single time copying and pasting a section of your content and telling it, okay, this is how I write. So I'll actually show you how to do this. I'm just gonna take the intro of this piece. I wouldn't typically use an intro, just so you guys know, because they're kind of written a bit differently. But I would say, define this as Nina's, oh my God, there we go, style, and then feed that in. And so now it's going to read that and then tell me about my style down here. Takes a second, just give it a moment. It's got to kind of break down who you are as a person, basically. So some of this isn't correct. Like you can see future-oriented, emphasis on big goals, detail-oriented. Those are things that I wouldn't say are a part of my writing. So then for Nina's style, I'm gonna have to correct it and say, actually, the detail-oriented, future-oriented, and emphasis on big wins are only a part of this example and should not be a basis for Nina's style. Please remove. And then give it a second. It is a Sunday. It's probably mad at me. Or nope, I did something wrong there. I don't know what just happened, but okay, we're gonna have to try that again. Please remove detail-oriented, future-oriented, and emphasis on big wins. Oh, and setting ambitious goals, as those are just parts of this piece and are not a part of Nina's overall style. Copy it in case it gets mad at me again. Yeah, it's getting mad at me. We're just gonna refresh it. Give it a second to figure itself out. When in doubt, whenever it like breaks like that, just refresh it. Sometimes it means you've had it open too long. Sometimes it means it's tired. It's okay, it happens. So here we go. Now we're getting more information on my personal style. And this is the problem, is like every time you start, you have to just figure this out with it. And it can sometimes change its view of what your style is. Now you can definitely just copy and paste this and share it with it every time, but it's kind of frustrating, and sometimes it gets it wrong. I find it does a better job when it can see what you actually said up there. So I used to start all my blog posts this way, and it's still like, I do think it is a good way to do this. It's just not a great way to do this. I do this more for my email newsletters, which you'll find in another lesson, but I find for a blog post where every piece of information we give it, we need to be really careful that it's the right one. That way we're not like moving it too far away from the prompt. And then suddenly by the time I actually start writing this post, it's forgotten what Nina's style is. That's not helpful. So instead, the way that we can define our tone of voice is by putting it in our style guide that we're going to feed it. But we need it to know our tone of voice first. So you're just going to take a piece of content. I would typically recommend pulling from like an actual section of a post. So this one's kind of hard, but I would say like this section is probably the most Nina-esque while still being similar to something I'd want another piece of content to be. Yes, this is not the greatest example of like an SEO blog post. This was an email newsletter that I turned into a post because there was a lot of popular demand for people to be able to read this in perpetuity, I guess. So I'm just going to copy this section of text that feels the most like what I'd want it to do. Now for your own site, go and find a piece of content, like be a bit more discerning than I have been here. I literally just picked the newest article on this site. Go and find a piece of content that you are most proud of, that you feel is most your style, or that is ranking the best on Google and thus is clearly like what Google also likes. Take that and go to ChatGPT and say, please define the tone of voice of this piece. And then just drop it in. So here we're getting exactly what my tone is in ChatGPT's opinion. And you'll notice if you give it different pieces of content, it will vary what it thinks your tone of voice is, which is why I say like pick the best version of what you'd like it to copy. You're probably gonna have to change it out a bit. So for me, the self-deprecating humor, that's 100% my tone and my style. However, I don't necessarily want ChatGPT doing that because it means it might make up stuff, and that's not going to be super helpful. So I might actually remove that from what I'm going to let ChatGPT tell me is the focus of like the way that I write. So now I'm going to come over here, and so you can see you need to fill in your own brand, just that way like it knows who you are specifically. So it should actually be that. And actually, because I have to give that to you guys, one sec, we're gonna do another one so I can edit it. So we'll have she knows SEO tone of voice is, and then we're just gonna list it. Casual and informal, appreciative. Actually, appreciatives of Alex, my VA, who is wonderful, but that's not something we do in every single post. Conversational and lighthearted. And then we're going to define what those terms mean. So that's where you're just going to copy what it's given you, and we're going to pull these so that it can reference them. So you can even write these yourself if you want. I just find it can be helpful to see like what ChatGPT determines this is, rather than me having to be like, okay, it's engaging, but its version of engaging is different than my version of engaging. So that's why I like to let it tell me what it thinks this is so that I can then have it replicate it as best I can. So typically I would say have 5 things here, but for the example purpose, I think 3 is fine. And you can see it likes to give you 5. So again, try to pull pieces of text to feed to it that are the best representation of the type of content you want. If you're not a very strong writer and you're like, actually, I hate everything on my site, go to a competitor, ask about them. It's the same idea as like in Jasper and ChatGPT. You can tell it to write in the tone of, and then define someone who's like really famous. So for example, like Neil Patel in the SEO industry, it knows who Neil Patel is. It doesn't know who I am, but it knows who he is. So if I think my style is similar to his, or if I want to emulate his style, then I would tell it to write in his tone of voice. Now, do I want to do that every single time? No. Or maybe there's things about his voice that aren't quite right for me. So I could even combine my version and then also feed in his another time and ask it to define his tone of voice and then merge the two tones. So maybe mine is casual and informal, conversational and lighthearted. Maybe his is more about like case studies or very factual or something. Because like it can be conversational and factual. That's doable. I wouldn't have it be formal and informal. That'd be weird. So don't like contradict yourself here. And if you're unsure if you've meshed it well, then feed the tone into ChatGPT and just say write a paragraph about and then give it a topic in this tone of voice and then give it this information here. Just copy and paste this into the prompt. And then you can see, is it getting this right? And if it's not, then you need to adjust it. But getting tone of voice right takes a minute, and once you do this once and it works, you're set. But getting it right does matter, so take that time to get it right. Then for the rest of this piece, you're gonna want to make sure you're adjusting the style guide to your site. So you can either go through this manually and adjust it, or you can feed it to ChatGPT and then tell it to adjust it. So here's my style guide, or here's like a style guide template. Please adjust it for my site, which we're gonna do now. So we're gonna leave tone of voice alone because it's fine. So we just need this here. So, hey ChatGPT, please adjust this style guide for my website based on the prompts I give you. Please ask me questions when you need more clarity to ensure we have the best style guide for my brand. My blog name / brand is She Knows SEO. And so here is the template we're going to use. There we go. So the first thing it's probably going to do is adjust it to fill in She Knows SEO in all of them. I don't know what it's doing there. Here we go. Now it's got to the style guide. So it seems to want to adjust the format. That's fine. To be honest, doesn't really matter. Oh, it's because I put the prompt in the top. That's on me. I should have just taken the style guide. We're actually going to stop generating and fix that. One sec. Because that is definitely a mistake. Here we go. Save and submit. There we go. Okay, so now it's probably going to first adjust it to fill in all the mentions of brand as She Knows SEO. So here you can see it's going to go through. It just wants to bold things. I don't really care. The format doesn't super matter for a style guide. I just have a pretty informal one. But here you can see it's going through to make sure that it's filled in all the information. Most of it was pretty much not adjusted because it didn't need to be. It's just right now finding the She Knows SEO. Now, when you go through it, you can say, okay, do you use semicolons or colons? Do you like contractions? Do you, I don't know, prefer, maybe you'd never use H4s, then remove that. And so you can just talk to it and say like, great, now, and then start adjusting. So like, great, but we don't use H4s. And so the thing is, it's going to have to rewrite it every single time. So I wouldn't typically give it one prompt. It's just that was the first thing I could think of to change. I would actually like in there talk to it there to adjust it and be like, okay, here's all the things I would adjust. Here you have like avoid using H4. So basically you just want to have a conversation with it then. Now, another way you can do this once it finishes is you can say, great, ask me 7 questions about the style guide to ensure it's the right one for my business. Make sure we get clear answers to create a final version of the style guide for my site. So this is a cool prompt that I learned from a free authority hacker video, like back when ChatGPT was like first hitting the scene. And so here you can see it's going to ask you questions that you can then answer. So maybe it wants more information. What else can we do that's going to help it a bit more? So of course it wants tone of voice. It literally added for itself, please provide a brief description of tone of voice. But we also have like, what's your stance on linking to external sources? How do you prefer to end your articles, with a strong CTA or a question? I love this one. I think that's such a great one for it to ask. The one thing is I wouldn't put that in the style guide because we're going to build our blog post piece by piece. And the risk is that it's going to end every single paragraph we build, or like blog section we build, with a CTA, which is not helpful. And target audience is something we're going to build in a second. But then we also have content types. So like, what are we going to focus on building? I think that's a really helpful one. Other visual elements we might have, if there's specific cliches not to use, I think that's really helpful because for so many people, the issue that I hear from them with ChatGPT or Jasper or Koala or whatever is that it uses a lot of cliches or like hokey language. And everyone has different versions of like what is too much for them. Like I don't really like, I don't know, must see used more than like once or twice in a travel post, but some people will use it every freaking sentence. And if that's your thing, that's fine. Now, for a pet site, I have never referred to my dog as my furry friend in my entire life. I think that is such a weird term, and like, or like fur buddy, fur pal. I don't know. I just don't like refer to his fur. It's weird. So I'm going to tell it that those are the ones not to use. And the more you can customize this to your site and to make sure it understands you, the better. So once I answer these, it's then going to rewrite this for me, and then we'll have a style guide ready to go. Now, I don't actually want any of that stuff, so we're just going to come here and grab these sections and shove them in here. There we go. And so up here, I just need to add, she knows SEO. Now, the last thing you'll see is that we don't have a customer avatar here, and we need that. We need them to know who our ideal audience is. So what we want to do for that is build your ideal customer avatar. I don't have like a specific prompt that I use for that because, to be honest, like I don't know, I've always just been pretty good about sitting down and writing out who the person is, but you can build it with ChatGPT. So, hey, ChatGPT, please act as an expert marketer. We need to build a custom audience avatar for a brand. The brand is, and then you would just name your brand. She knows SEO. Please ask me as many questions as you need to define this custom avatar. And so this is something I do if like, especially if I'm not very familiar with the type of thing of like, what is this thing that I'm asking it to do? So if you have never built an audience avatar before, essentially it's just like creating a person that you're writing for. So for example, like for one of my sites, it's like McKenna has, I don't know, I'm gonna make up one, I guess. Like McKenna has a job in advertising that she really hates. She wants to start her own side hustle, but doesn't really know how to make it actually profitable. So she's been like doing the blogging thing because she's kind of seen it around. She likes to travel on her time off, but she doesn't know how to combine that stuff. Like all those things. So like, what's her age, gender? You can see here, they've like kind of given you all this information. So fill this out. Just be like, and you could just say, the mission of She Knows SEO is to help women learn SEO for their blogs to make passive income. We offer SEO services and travel blog SEO courses. And then just go through. So 18 to 35, I'm just like making stuff up. Female, suburbs, have a family or want to have one, went to uni, work in advertising. And so you can see like it's going to just, based on the little bit I gave there, create a custom audience avatar. So here we go, Sarah, the SEO seeker. And so you're going to get a bit of like your brand overview for mission and offerings. You don't really need that for the actual audience avatar. I would kind of remove that for what you're going to feed to ChatGPT. And then you can see like what you don't fill out, it's going to try and help you with. It's better if you can fill it out, or if you see what it offers and then you can comment and be like, actually, they wouldn't use LinkedIn. That sort of a thing. I love that it gives you pain points. It's something that's super helpful. This is actually the first time I did this like in depth for She Knows SEO, where I like went super deep into this stuff, was with a business coach that I hired, and just filling out his onboarding survey. Like I had to do this for every single offering I had, and it would have taken me a million years. So I fed it all those questions and then had it ask me the questions, and then together we figured out all the stuff for each of my people. So it's pretty simple to do this. Now, each time you do it, it's going to ask you like different kind of methods of creating the customer avatar. So it's not always going to be exactly this. Like it's not always going to be this exact format. That's why when I say like I don't have a strict prompt for it, basically the prompt is just help me do this. And then we can talk to each other and figure out like how we're going to create this person. So I think this is a really interesting and fun way to create your customer avatar. And then what we do is I'm going to just take audience avatar and copy it over there. And then I'm just going to skip brand overview and take all the rest. Now, am I reading them right now? No, I'm not, to be honest with you, because we need to actually write this blog post. So I just want to get rid of the numbers. It wouldn't really matter to ChatGPT, but it matters to my little brain. So I want to get rid of those. So now that we have this sorted, I'm actually going to leave you to do this first. That way you don't have to pause the video. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to actually write that blog post. Don't worry, that video will be right beneath this, but I wanted to break it up because first of all, it'll otherwise be a crazy long video, but also that way you can take a minute and get this sorted without having to like pause the video and then maybe it refreshes or whatever. So your homework before you even watch the next video is to set this up, okay? And then I want you to have this ready to go and have your outline ready from the last lesson. And then we're going to start writing your blog post. Now that we have our style guide that we can reuse time and time again, so don't worry, you're not gonna have to remake this every single time. We are going to take the full prompt here and run it through ChatGPT. Now, I'm going to just feed this information in, but like I said, you can go to custom instructions in GPT-4 and just put it here. So this is where you're going to put your style guide. So the like what it needs to know about you section, this is all information it needs to know about us. Now for the how you want it to respond, this is technically part of what we had here in terms of like the clarity, structure, that sort of thing. So you can like break this up. I just put it all into this section unless it's too long. So for example, if I took the whole thing and put it in here, you can see way too long. Now, admittedly, I do have some extra stuff. So if this is too long, you're gonna like break up the little bits and pieces. The main reason this is too long is going to be like my audience avatar here is really long. So you can actually ask ChatGPT to summarize your audience avatar if you want, but equally you can just come and put it in each time if you want to. Up to you. We're just going to put it in manually this time. So I'm going to take the whole prompt here, and this is basically a prompt that says what it's supposed to do. So act as an expert blog copywriter, and then it defines what that means. Then I give it the style guide, I give it our tone of voice, and our custom audience avatar. So I'm gonna pop all that in. Now, I just like to kind of finish this before I move on to the next piece and start adding more instructions. So I just say, once you have read the above, say read. Because like I said, I think in one of the other videos somewhere in this course, I have slippery fingers and I tend to hit enter by accident and then have to like go back a bunch of times to adjust it. It's better for me to just give it the one instruction and then move on to the next thing. So now that it knows what it's supposed to do generally and has all this context, we need to give it the specific information for writing our piece. Now, I hate AI generated intros. I think that they are most of the time absolutely terrible. Your intro is a spot for you to really connect with your user. So I do recommend writing your intros yourself, to be honest. I find them very easy. I just think it's easier for me to write it, especially when you're adding in EEAT elements. But if you do want to write it with ChatGPT, I'm going to take you through writing the main sections of a blog post. We're not going to write the full thing because we'd have to go through like each paragraph, but most paragraphs are basically the same. So we're going to do an intro, we'll do a main body section, and then we'll do an FAQ and a conclusion. So let's go into this general outline I had before. So you can see this doesn't really tell ChatGPT much. It says alt text, it doesn't talk about it being for bloggers, it doesn't really give a lot of context. So before I'm actually going to feed this to ChatGPT, I want to create briefs for each section. You can do this with ChatGPT where you can ask it to like fill in some information, give some context. Now, I don't do that because I think you should be an expert on this stuff and it can get things wrong. So this is where I would take the research that we did earlier and start slotting in research wherever it fits into this outline. For me, for this topic, I do know a lot about it, so we're just gonna go kind of off the top of my head, but we're also just gonna give a little bit of information. The more you can give, the better. So like, if you wrote an academic essay on this just to like basically prompt ChatGPT for each section, I would honestly still say that's fine. Like, give it too much information. That's better than not giving it anything. Now, for an intro, I use what's called the SPEAR framework for intros, which is developed by Jamie IF. So if you go to his site, you can either just know what that is and then write it yourself. You can know what it is and feed a bit of information to ChatGPT, or you can even take it, come to ChatGPT. We're just gonna have to make a new chat for this. And then I'm going to enable our web pilot and have it read this. Please read and summarize with actionable steps for writing an intro to a blog post with this method. Blog post, there we go. I meant to say method, don't know where that came from in my brain, but whatever. So it's going to run web pilot now, summarize the tips that Jamie gives for writing this introduction. And then we can give this as the how of our prompt for ChatGPT. So like, this is the thing, if I had just given it search/user intent, it doesn't necessarily know what that means. Same for pain points, same for expertise, for the audience, and for rapport. I think for audience it'd have a pretty good idea, but it might be off. So we want to make sure we do as much as we can to give it context. So what I like a lot actually is I'm liking these actionable steps here versus just the stuff above, because I want it to be kind of short and sweet. Remember, we are always kind of fighting against the limitations of ChatGPT's memory. So now that we have our giant amount of information there, we're going to give a little bit more context. So great. So we've already said to act as an expert blog writer. I always start with that, so I have to like stop myself from saying it again. So it's like, please act as an expert blog writer. We are going to write a blog post on the topic of, what was it? How to write alt text. How to write alt text for bloggers. So I'm giving a lot less information for our audience because we gave so much ahead of time. So now it knows basically what it's doing and basically who it's for. So I'm going to now teach it how to write a good intro. Here's how to write a good introduction for a blog post. And that's where I'm going to paste that information it gave me about Jamie IF's system. So now I'm going to say, please write a 50 to 100 word introduction for this blog post. However, there's something I haven't said yet, which is the SEO element of it. I have not said what the keyword is or where to use it. So I'm going to add another section of like what needs to be in it is the keyword should be used in the first sentence. This post's keyword is how to write alt text. So I've given it more information here. Now, do I have personal experience with alt text? Yes. So where it says like establish your expertise with relevant experiences or data, I haven't given it my experience yet. So I'm just gonna say experience and then colon. I just find it's like, I don't know, it figures itself out. Your prompt does not need to look good, to be fair. It needs to make sense, but it does not need to be, I don't know, the most consistent formatting wise. So my experience, I run multiple niche sites that are image heavy, especially my travel blog. My grandma is blind and I have ADD, so I use a screen reader. Images without alt text take away from our enjoyment. So now you have a bit of my experience there. I didn't go super in depth, but just giving that experience is going to make this a better introduction. I will say ChatGPT is really bad about sticking to word count. It is not good at that. I'm basically just doing this for my own sake. Maybe one day it'll be better about counting words, but I also want to like clearly show it should be smaller. So it at least knows 100 versus 1,000. And that should help us a little bit. You could also say end on a call to action to keep reading. You could say whatever is standard for your introductions. So I'm going to run this prompt and we're going to get our introduction for our piece. Okay, not great to be honest with you. So hey there, Sarah and fellow SEO seekers. I hate that's how so many like AIs start to write intros, is they speak to one specific person. So I would just delete that sentence, to be honest with you. Ever wonder like why is it past tense? But that's something that wasn't necessarily in my, I don't think I put that in the base thing that I put there. So that's good note for me. I didn't tell it write in present tense. Something to say. So ever wondered how to write alt text for your blog, images, random emoji? Well, you're in the right spot. As someone who runs several niche sites, particularly a travel blog bursting with vibrant photos, I've seen firsthand the importance of alt text, not just for SEO, but for inclusivity. My grandma who's blind and I with my ADD, rely on screen readers, and trust me, images without alt text, they're like a story half told. Dive in and we'll unravel the art of crafting the perfect alt text for your blog. Let's make the web a better place for everyone. So like the content is there. I think the structure is not great. It has used a random amount of commas in this sentence that is slightly overwhelming. It's also kind of gone into passive voice. So just because you prompt it well does not mean you're done. We're still going to need to customize. And 100% I find intros the worst part to customize. So like if you're going to use it for intros, be prepared to put in some work with it. So please use active voice. The emoji makes no sense, so remove it. Do not start. I was gonna say remove first sentence. It's just bad. Remove first sentence. Break up the paragraph. Smaller paragraphs. Often for intros and conclusions, it tries to write like one giant chunk of text. I think it was like kind of trained to do more like academic intros and conclusions that way. So it is really annoying. Yeah, okay, I think that's kind of the main thing I want to do. Remove flowery language like vibrant photos, or unravel the art. So there we go, we're customizing it a bit more. And so basically just think of it like the notes you would edit and give to your to someone who's working for you. So be prepared to edit as you go. We have to. It's really, really important. If you just let ChatGPT write for you, it is going to produce utter nonsense. It's going to be really, really bad. So what we want to do instead is work with it. If we let this go, this kind of random flowery piece of nonsense, it's going to think that's okay. So the like analogy I guess I use pretty often is like with a dog. So if you let your dog sit on the couch 50 times and then you're mad at it for sitting on the couch the 51st time, that's on you. That's 100% your fault. Because to that dog, you've always let it sit on the couch. So if you write a blog post and have just let ChatGPT do this and you keep going with it, then it's going to think that's okay. So it's going to keep doing the same thing. Editing as you go is very, very important, and it's going to just massively improve the output you're going to get. And the way to edit it is just think of the notes that you would give a writer. So if this was in a Google Doc, what are you going to say in like the little comment section to the writer? You're going to say, actually, I said use active voice. The emoji makes no sense. Let's get rid of it. Remove the first sentence, and then break it up into smaller paragraphs, remove the flowery language. So I think it took smaller paragraph to mean shorten it. My bad. This is the thing. I don't mind hitting enter a bunch of times. I don't really care if ChatGPT hits that. So I'm pretty cool with this for right now. But I think we've got it here. So ever wondered how to write alt text for your blog images? As a travel blogger with multiple niche sites, I can't stress its importance enough. My grandma's blindness and my ADD mean that we both lean on screen readers. Images without alt text diminish our experience. In this post, we'll guide you through crafting the perfect alt text for your blog. Together, we'll make the web more inclusive for everyone. Now, I am a singular site owner, so please don't use we, use I. Now, again, something not in my style guide. If that was in your style guide, it'll be a lot better about it. So this is why I say like you're gonna have to adjust the style guide over time and like adjust it to your site. This isn't the exact one that I used, so it's a little bit different. That's fine. You'll learn as you go what needs to be in your style guide, and I want to do this the way that you guys are going to do this, so make those little adjustments. My site is just run by one person. Please use present tense. There we go. So this is going to be now what we can use. Would I use in this post? No, but I want to keep going. Otherwise, you would just keep having the conversation with it until you get what you want. I would rather just write the introduction. I think it's so simple. It doesn't take a lot of energy or effort to do it. Yeah, I don't know. By the time you're done with ChatGPT with the intro, it's going to take you, it would have taken you less time to just do it yourself. So I would just do it myself, but whatever. Great. Now let's move on to the body of the blog. Do you need to say that? No, I like to. I don't know why. I guess because like it is back to that whole like treating it like an intern thing where I want to tell it what we're doing next. So I also want to say great because like I just want to tell it did a good job. I want to be like, yeah, we did it. Let's go. Like, I don't know. I think being nice to ChatGPT is just the nice thing to do. So great, we've got that section done. Now we're moving on to the body of the blog. So you're gonna have your outline here. And this is why I say like add more detail. If I just say write a section on what is alt text, it could do whatever the heck it wants. But if I had notes beneath this about how long alt text should be, who it's for, the formatting of it, like what is the code for it, when did alt text was invented in 1977, I don't know, whatever. Like if I had those specific details, it's gonna have more to pull from. So we're gonna do both, and I wanted to show you the difference. So we're just gonna do hashtag what is alt text. And well, I meant to type a bit more, but whatever. I was gonna say, well, I'll show you what we're gonna say after, but here we go. Let's just see what it does. And don't be alarmed if it takes a minute for bloggers like Sarah. It always does that. It does like to refer to a single person, but we can adjust it. Okay, so what is alt text? Alt text, short for alternative text, is a brief description added to the HTML code of an image on a website. Think of it as a concise caption that describes the content and function of the image, but it's not typically visible to the average site visitor. Instead, it serves three main purposes: accessibility, SEO, and for image loading issues. Then it says, for bloggers like Sarah, we are keen on maximizing their site's potential and ensuring it's user-friendly for all. Alt text isn't just a recommendation, it's a necessity. And this, you'll notice, like, this is something I would probably have put a colon for. I told it not to up here, so it didn't do it. Yay, we fought its love of colons. Whether you're sharing a scenic snapshot from your latest travel adventure or a helpful infographic, alt text ensures that every visitor, regardless of their abilities, gets the full picture. So I actually, to be honest, that's pretty good. I actually quite like this. And you can already see the difference in quality versus the intro. It does a way better job the first time. Now, alt text is quite a general thing. If you were like talking about, I don't know, the Sook potholes in Victoria, which is like a beautiful hike I just did with my dog recently, then like it's not gonna have as much information. For alt text, it does have a good amount of information. But if I say, what is alt text? So I wanna say, write a blog section based on this brief. So we used Markdown to show that this is the header. And I'm gonna give some notes. So alt text equals alternative text. You don't really even, I'm actually gonna stop doing the little lines because it's gonna mess me up and I'll get confused. Helps blind people understand what's in the image. Helps people with screen readers. Used by Google to understand what's in an image along with the metadata. And then let's just make up alt text was invented in 1977. I don't know why I've decided that year. Yeah, so basically the more context you give it, the better. And it's gonna be able to kind of pull from your notes. So think of it like if you were giving an outline to a very beginner freelance writer, you're gonna give specific notes. I've even seen people give outlines to their writers that's like, this paragraph section will be, I always say paragraph, but I mean header section or blog section. So I apologize if I say that in a confusing way. But essentially, this section, the what is alt text section, should be 100 words long. And it should include a restaurant, a thing to do, and I don't know, if it's dog friendly, whatever. If you can give specific instructions like that, you're gonna get a way better output. So here, this is a pretty general one, but the more information I can give, the better. You add alt text to the image in the image library on WordPress or in the block editor for that specific photo. And yes, I'm just trying to add information to show you guys as an example. Technically, a lot of this would fall under some of the other headers I was looking at before. Alt text should be 2 sentences, whatever. I just want to give it some more information so we can see the difference in what it's going to give as an output. So this, honestly, usable. I would just talk with it a bit and correct it on the fact that I want to get rid of, like, for bloggers like Sarah, I would just have it say for bloggers, I think would be fine. Otherwise, I think it's very strong. But let's see what it does now. So first it's pulling bolding, which was in our thing before. It's referencing my grandma from above. Doesn't necessarily have to, but I think it's a good idea that it does. But it's not just about accessibility. Google also leans on alt text paired with metadata to grasp the content of an image. This practice isn't new. In fact, the concept of alt text dates back to 1977. Wondering how to add it? So you can see, completely different. Was the other one better in some ways? Yes, I do think so. Partially because I just fed it a bunch of random information to try and get this to work. But we've got some really good information here. So it has included what it is. It has then also included some EEAT in terms of like my expertise with it, referencing my grandma. Then it talks about like it's not just accessibility, which I kind of pushed it away from really quickly. I didn't really even talk about SEO. I didn't talk about like loading time issues or anything. So probably the other one was better in terms of actually answering this question, but that's where your content brief would come in. So yeah, I think this is fine, definitely usable. We can go from there. So then I would just say great, and we would do this all again, rinse and repeat, and we would use this exact thing again, but for the next section with its brief. So you could even, instead of giving notes, you could say what is alt text, and then you could just give the instruction of what it should refer to. Explain what alt text is, include that it works for, or include that it matters for SEO, for accessibility, and for like web loading issues. Reference my grandmother. Mention that it was started in 1977. So whether you prefer to do a brief that's more like proper sentences or just a bullet list like this, either works. I don't find that there's a huge difference between the two, but if you give misinformation here, it will misinform. So do make sure that you are like pulling proper research for this. Then let it run. And if you want to adjust this, you could say, great, talk about the web loading issues that we didn't mention. We could do that, whatever. Or if you're happy with it, just keep going with the next section. So you're just going to keep building on this. And again, remember, if you're not happy with it, edit it now. Otherwise, it's going to kind of use pattern recognition to keep doing this over and over and over again. So that's why we're going to need to be really careful. Now, if you're noticing things like, okay, yeah, it is using past tense, so present tense only, singular, I don't know, person, I, not we. You can also say if you never refer to that, so if you want to do it in like third person instead, so it never refers to I or we. If you want to do it in second person, so it refers to you. All of those are things that as you go, you can add over here to your style guide. The very first time you write a post, you're going to learn the most about yourself and what you enjoy in a blog post. So I do recommend having this open on the side and just like making notes for yourself on things that it didn't do that you didn't like. So like I would say, never refer to Sarah as an individual audience member. She is just an example of our ideal audience. That sort of a thing. So you'll start to learn what you don't like about its common outputs and what you do. So we would just keep going through this until we got to our FAQ. I do recommend FAQs going above the conclusion because most people check out when they see conclusion. They're like, okay, conclusion, we're done, bye, and then they leave. But if you have the FAQs first, they'll finish reading them before they get to the conclusion. Now, if your FAQs are kind of irrelevant to the piece, number one, they shouldn't be in it. But number two, then I would put them below the conclusion. So if it was like, okay, you, I don't know, we're randomly trying to game the system and use every people also ask question that has ever referred to the word alt text. Well, you're going to have 1,000,002, and a lot of them are going to be very weird nonsense that has like just isn't really helpful to our people. Then I'm not going to put our people through the process of listening to it. So I'll put it below. However, I always end my conclusions on a CTA, so for me, I tell them to leave at the end of my conclusion, which might not be the most helpful for you. So let's just pretend that we've written the entire piece. Great, what a good blog post. Now let's write the FAQs. So this is where we're going to need to define what a good FAQ is. So a great FAQ is 50 to 60 words long, repeats the question in the first sentence, and answers it really concisely. Glad I spelled that right. Didn't think I was going to. Yeah, it should all be in one paragraph, and the question should be an H3. Let's write our first FAQ for this post. How do you write alt text for an infographic? Have I made this up entirely? Yes. So basically I've just said, we've got all this context already for our post. So they know who we're talking to, they know what we're doing, they've got all that already. What we need to tell them is like what an FAQ is. A lot of times FAQs for ChatGPT are just another kind of header for a post. So it doesn't know that there are different rules. We have to define those rules. I've just thrown in some here. These are kind of my general things that I follow in terms of like repeating the question in the first sentence, making it really concise. Saying concise does more than saying 50 to 60 words long, to be honest, but I still put it in there because that is my rule for it. It should all be in one paragraph. Google typically prefers that, and the question should be an H3. Now, if you were doing this at scale, you may also want to note whether or not you allow bullet points, if it should still bold things, that sort of stuff. Maybe this is a section where we just don't use emojis, so we kind of cancel out some of our other notes. If anything is going to vary from what happened above, we need to change that. So if it thinks the whole time all the way through, use emojis, use emojis, use emojis, and we get here and we say, no, we don't want them. If we don't say that and it uses an emoji, we have no right to get mad at it. Just like that dog on the couch. If we just bought a new couch, which maybe that's what happened here, we then need to teach new rules. So teach the new rule. Now for this one, I don't expect it's going to need an emoji. I think I also, because I said removing the emoji from the first thing, I think I've kind of told it not to use emojis really, but we're pretty much good to go from here. So let's run this. You could even, in theory, list all of your FAQs at the same time. I wouldn't recommend that just because you want to make sure it's at least going the right way for the first one. It's also much harder to edit multiple outputs at the same time. Oh, it seems to be stuck for some reason. Oh, see, I see what I did there. Repeat the question. I meant to say, not repeat the question, but like mention words from the question. We can adjust that. Actually, let's adjust it because it seems to be stuck. Reiterates part of the question in the first sentence. There we go. There you can see, when writing alt text for an infographic, that's what I meant. Okay, let's see how long this is. It looks pretty good. 47 words. So I could even add a little bit more technically, but this is a great FAQ. How do you write alt text for an infographic? When writing alt text for an infographic, start by summarizing its main message or theme. Then briefly describe the key visual element or data points. Remember, the goal is to convey the infographic's essence in a concise manner, ensuring those using screen readers grasp its primary content. Maybe it's not casual enough. Please make it more casual, like talking to a friend. The risk with this, though, is that it might undo some of the things I said there. So for an infographic, you kick off your alt text by giving a quick rundown of the main gist or theme. Then toss in a short description of the standout visuals or juicy data bits. It's all about getting the main vibe of the infographic across without making it a novel. Cool, right? This feels like when you like tell your dad slang or something a little bit. I don't know, that's like what I'm getting from this. So like probably too casual. Maybe shouldn't have said talking to a friend. This is the thing. You can then edit it. So then just go back and edit your prompt if you don't like the way it changed it. I think the first one is very fine. I do tend to get a little bit more formal with my FAQs, so that's totally good for me. So rather than accidentally make it think this is the way we want to go for our conclusion, let's stick with this. So great. Now let's write the conclusion. And again, you're going to need to define your structure for a conclusion. So typically what a lot of these like AI writers are pre-trained to do with a conclusion is to just like kind of summarize the title and then move on, and not really actually summarize the points of the piece. Now, for me, the way that I write a conclusion, I always end on a CTA. So I think that's really important. Tell them what to do next. But in the body of the conclusion, I actually want to make sure I'm answering whatever the point or pain point of the piece is. So in this one, I really want to make sure I am reiterating what how to write alt text. What is alt text? How to write it? Because I think that's kind of the main pain point, is if someone's Googling what is alt text, they also want to know how to do it properly. So a good conclusion restates the main point of the article and solves the pain point of the user. It should end on a CTA that tells the user what to do next. For this piece, the CTA should direct them, and then this is where you tell them what it should do next. So should it direct them to comment? Should they email you? Should they follow you on a social? Should they go to another blog post? Should they, whatever you want them to do next. There's no wrong answer other than someone getting to the end of this post and going, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to leave. Because if you can help direct them through your site, that's really where you keep them engaged with your content, or with you as a brand if you're sending them to some other platform that you're on. So for this one, I would say it should direct them to a post on my site about optimizing images for SEO or something. I don't know, making up an article I don't have. So if we submit this now, it's gonna take what it sees for a while above. Now, it's not gonna know everything. And if you have quite a long post that you wrote and you were really editing the paragraphs as you go, it might have forgotten. So if you're worried that it doesn't remember the article, gather the bits of the article and then say, here is the article for your memory, and then just paste it. So when in doubt, do that. If you're using 3.5, you're definitely going to need to do that. If you're using 4, it's pretty good, but it really does depend on how much back and forth you guys had. So let's just try it this way and we'll see. I mean, remembering that we did a very succinct version, so it might not, it might not have all the information. Perfect, okay. To wrap things up, alt text isn't just a technical SEO practice, it's a bridge to inclusivity, ensuring everyone, regardless of their abilities, can engage with and understand your content. By crafting thoughtful and descriptive alt text, especially for images like infographics, so you can see it's referencing things we did above, you're not only boosting your site's accessibility, but also its visibility on search engines. Ready to take your image game a step further? Dive into our guide on optimizing images for SEO and ensure every visual element on your blog works hard for you. That's pretty good, considering this is not a complete piece. So that's how I would do this. Then I take everything and I would pop it into another Google Doc or into Word. I hate writing or editing anything in Word. But then I do a last pass edit. So at that point, I'm gonna be like, okay, here's copy and paste it in here. It'd be all formatted for Google Docs with the headers and stuff. And then I just go through again to make sure it really feels like me, sounds like me, works for me. Taking that time is very, very helpful. It's really going to benefit you to spend that extra minute editing. There's a reason that so many agencies and stuff are literally just hiring AI editors, because humans do need to run through this to ensure it works. So even just for this conclusion, hitting enter a few times, maybe it didn't bold things quite the way I wanted to, maybe whatever. But I would just want to go through and ensure that the content really is my content. Now, also, if you just copy and paste whatever AI shoots out, you legally don't own it. So you cannot copyright content that you didn't write or that AI just completely wrote itself. So yes, it is good, and the more that you do in-depth prompts, the better it'll give you. Still, it does need that extra personal touch to ensure that you actually own the material too. So that's something I learned more recently from Liz Stapleton, who is the blogging lawyer expert, but it's a very important thing to know, especially when so many people are worried about someone else ripping off their content. You would have no legal claim if you haven't gone through and edited the piece at all. So take that time. Not only is it going to result in better content, but it's also going to protect your content more. So going through it all at once as well, just make sure that you also it flows well, you know what's happening in the whole thing. It can help you figure out where to put images. Yes, you can definitely add personal experience in your prompt. So for example, in a content brief like this, you saw for the intro where I mentioned like my grandma and my own ADD. You can do that for any of these sections. And that's super important for, for EEAT. So for example, if I was doing like a things to do in Victoria or something post, I could tell it the specific formatting I want it to have. So like, for example, let's just say soak potholes, text here, distance from Victoria, dog friendly, I don't know, parking, whatever. So I could then give it this as like kind of the format to instruct it how to format the content. I could also then say, oops, I did not mean to hit enter there. I could also say, like before it writes that section, took my dog there, he and I swum a bunch, be careful because if the green algae is blooming, they can get diarrhea. I could talk about like how pretty it is, the time for parking, whatever. Those are all things you can mention in there and then feed to it. So it'll populate it both so it's pre-formatted and so it actually has your personal experience built in. That's gonna again help just save you time later. I definitely love ChatGPT for formatting. I use it all the time for that. That was like my first main use case for it, to be honest, back when it was not great at producing content. But yeah, this is how you would use it to write better content and make sure that your blog post is really solid. Now, for an affiliate post, you're gonna kind of need to blend the idea of like giving it a structure and giving it more information. So affiliate posts, especially for like a review, like maybe a roundup of different products or hotels or something, you're gonna want to teach it the format and you're gonna wanna feed it a ton of specifics about that thing. So remember that it hasn't read the internet today. It read it in 2021. Now you can feed it, so I'm gonna say forget the above, that way we're not like remembering stuff. You could, if you have, I don't have the plugin turned on here, do I? No, I don't. So you would need to have Web Pilot turned on. And let's just go grab a random Royal York hotel in Toronto. I just know it well enough to kind of pull some information. But this is a hotel in downtown Toronto. If it would load, there we go. So I could say, read this web page and we'll talk in a minute. Say read when you've done that. And I'll feed it the web page. So it can like check that the page exists and be like, okay, cool, I can pull some information here. The thing is, it can only pull what's on this page. So it can't know all the details of the images. It's not gonna know reviews from every different place. It's not gonna know your experience. It's not gonna have all of the details. So while it can help you by like seeing the thing, I don't recommend giving it the web page and then saying like summarize the web page or take all the information on this page and turn it into a blog post. So here, yeah, it's giving you a summary. Like this is just so clearly AI generated, where it's just the most basic thing. It doesn't talk about pain points, it doesn't refer to like anything in particular, it just doesn't really feel great for your user. So this is a good way to like get some base information where you could say what's the pet policy, you could learn more about it from a research standpoint, but it's not gonna actually give you the specifics of, or it's not going to give you like something to write on immediately. You're going to take all this information, synthesize it, put it into your content brief, and then when you're prompting, give it the format of this. And I would even say, rather than just saying like text here, like I did in the last example, I would even say like kind of first sentence, or I guess, let me just write it out so you can see what I mean. Sometimes I forget other people aren't as like word focused as I am, but I could be like first sentence addressing why this is great for the main pain point of our user, and like just like basically break down instructions almost sentence by sentence. So explain the best amenities of this place that would matter to our user. I don't know, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of like ways we can address this. Yeah, well, whatever. It's hard. I'm very bad at thinking on my feet with this stuff. I usually like template this stuff and then keep rerunning it. But essentially, you're gonna like break it down. So maybe you do have like, I don't know, pros and cons list here, whatever. The more you can give it the structure of exactly what you want, the better the output is. You can even feed it one of your own posts and ask it to like create a template for making an affiliate review like this of one of those sections, and it will help you do that, which is really great. Now, I vary it a little bit more because I don't want it to always sound quite as robotic of like the first sentence is always this, the second sentence is always this. I like to change it up a bit, but it's just good to like make sure it addresses and hits on certain points. So you could even just say text here, ensure you note like how it addresses the pain point, blah, blah, blah. The more detail you go into, the better. And a lot of this isn't going to be like a one and done prompt because you're going to need to customize it a little bit for each one. So yes, okay, maybe all of your restaurant reviews have a similar structure, but you're going to want to vary it enough that, like I said, it doesn't sound like kind of like, that way it doesn't sound like programmatic SEO in like the old terrible way where you just like Command F'd and then like replaced every mention of, I don't know, best dish here with whatever the dish is. Like it just felt very overly templated. We'd still want it to sound like us. So that's again why we're going to make sure it still has our style guide, has our tone of voice, has all of that information to keep running through. And then I will say, like, writing affiliate posts with ChatGPT is not my favorite. I definitely prefer to do it in Jasper, at least at time of recording. But doing it this way, where you kind of create the pattern for it to follow, is a really good way to make it simpler for yourself. Is there editing needed? Yes. Are you going to need to like do a ton of research and create a really in-depth brief? 100%, especially if you haven't been there or haven't used the thing. But I really recommend using the thing or going to the place, please. If not, call the people that like either run the place or that make the thing, or talk to people who have used it, but get as much information as you can. This is really where like that research module needs to be used to the fullest. It really does. Because if someone's going to be spending money and you're recommending they spend money on something, you need to give them all the information they can get. So we don't want someone to, I don't know, if you tell them about the Fairmont Royal York and you've told them it's in the wrong side of the city, that's not great. Or if it's something really general, like, okay, it has a private bathroom. What hotel doesn't? Like, if it's a hotel, it should have a private bathroom. If it's, I don't know, like if it has a balcony, cool. Why does that matter? So you can even instruct it inside of this section to talk about features and then direct them to the benefit. So this is a great tip for anyone writing affiliates. Don't just tell them the features. If I'm buying a car, I genuinely don't care like how much mileage it has. I care about why that mileage impacts me. Okay, it has great mileage. Why does that matter? It means that I can save money in the long term road tripping with my dog all the time. It means that I can go hiking and not worry about the cost of driving out to the hikes every weekend. It means that I can live my life not at a gas station, because one of like the things I hate most in this world is pumping gas. I find it really boring. just drives me out of my mind. So like, that's what matters. I don't care if someone just tells me, I don't know, it gets 8 miles to the gallon. I'm making up nonsense because I know nothing about cars. But that's not going to help me make a decision. Just like telling me, okay, it's close to restaurants and bars. Okay, basically every hotel is. So why does that matter to me? Or why is it like, how is it closer to something that's actually relevant and highly impactful for me? How is that going to do more for me? If you just tell me, okay, it's a 5-minute walk from a bus stop, is it a good bus stop? Is it a helpful bus stop? Why does this matter to me? So again, talk about the feature to benefit. And so that could be something you add to your template as well. Psst, you definitely should add it to your template. So it's all just about customizing these prompts for you over time. So yes, we have the massive prompt library. I definitely don't recommend going through every single prompt. I have, and I can tell you, you don't need all of them for like just for the sake of it. It's going to depend on your use case and what you're doing. And some will work better for you than others just based on what you need or your personal style. And that's totally okay. So even these prompts that I've given you guys as a basis, some of them might not be your cup of tea. You might need to adjust them more than what I do to fit you and your tone. And actually, that's better because if we're all using the same prompt the exact same way, it's all gonna sound the same. Even with different tones of voice, like it's still gonna, at its basis, sound the same. And people really respond better to different sounding material. They do want it to be unique to some extent. Now, before I go, I just want to talk quickly about AI detectors. They are bullshit. Ignore them. Like, that's all you need to know. I've tested a bunch back like when Google still tried to pretend that they hated AI content or like wouldn't rank it, even when like so much of my AI content ranked. Then we kind of needed to like, I don't know, it was the cool thing to care about it. Now, just ignore it. Honestly, to pass an AI detector is pretty easy. You just make it unnatural language, and then it's like, oh, yay, it's not AI written, but it's also unreadable. So that's not helpful. What we care way more about is creating helpful content. So that's where the research comes in, that's where addressing pain points comes in, that's where putting in personal experience comes in. That's what all the helpful information should be. Don't worry about using like, wherefore art thou or something just to like get you past an AI detector. Not worth your time, not worth your effort. And I can tell you, everyone I know who put stuff in that was written like 10 years ago that like AI wasn't on the scene, it tells them it's like 100% AI because it just means it's common language. Remember, these are language models and they use natural language processing. So of course, they sound like natural people. So just don't focus on them. It shouldn't matter that much to you. Instead, focus more on the fact that this piece is going to be the most helpful piece of content to your user. That's going to be the main thing. So now that you know how to write a blog post, take that outline you had, take your massive, style guide, and create your first blog post. Don't get frustrated. It's going to take the longest the first time you do this. It's okay that it takes time. It does not need to be a 2-click or 2-minute process. Honestly, I would rather you spend more time on it, even if it feels kind of redundant, like, oh, AI should speed this up. I get that. 100% I get that. But it doesn't mean it's going to be instantaneous. And the people who want it to be instantaneous and who let it be instantaneous fail the hardest. So take some time. Over time, it will speed up. I can promise you that. Like, I can write a great blog post with ChatGPT in like 15 minutes. But it took a long time to get here. So yes, I've templated all sorts of instructions. Definitely, I am able to adjust things a lot faster. And that's great. But it does still take some time. So could I write that whole post in that amount of time? Not quite. It'd take me a little bit longer. I am a pretty fast writer though. But this can just help me speed up some of the processes. So give yourself a break, let it take time. Don't worry if it takes some time. Even if it takes days, I don't care. Let the first few take time, and then realize what works for you, figure out the prompts that are best for you of these, or the exact type of phrasing that works for you. And then you'll be able to get faster and faster and faster. And ultimately, the goal of speeding this up isn't to make it so that a blog post can be ready in 30 seconds flat. It's so that you can save time to spend time making it the best. And that's why I don't mind it taking a bit longer. I like it when blog posts take some time to write, to be honest. If it can be done too fast, it kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as satisfying. I like challenges. I like doing all the research. I like, doing those big case studies. There's a reason I enjoy doing that stuff. And it's because it is harder. And it also means other people don't do it or can't do it. And honestly, usually the can't isn't that they couldn't physically do it, it's that they just don't bother. So spend that time and you will get content that is like bulletproof. And that's what we want. So now you know how to write your blog post. I will see you in another lesson. There's so many more in this course. I don't remember which one's next. But I want you to write your post, edit it as you go, and then at the end, edit it again a little bit just to make sure it's kind of finalized for you. And take your time with it. And I cannot wait to hear how it goes for you.